Hey, this is Mike Bajrami.
And Nicole Slater.
And you're listening to the Mental Notes Podcast, Episode 2.
Ooh, and this, I'm so excited about, was a great interview with Paul Grundman. You have known him for a couple years, right?
Yeah, I've known him probably a little longer. Paul and I met through the internet on Twitter, and we got together and had some amazing conversations about the music business, music in general, and life. Paul is so able to go into some meaningful conversations.
He's like the Tony Robbins of the music industry, I swear.
He is.
So Paul has a pretty famous last name, right?
Yeah, for those of you who recognize it, Paul's father is Bernie Grundman of Bernie Grundman Mastering.
They're trailblazers.
Absolutely. They really spearheaded the movement towards independent mastering studios.
Yeah, and you would think with his last name, like everything was given to him. I thought that was a really interesting kind of point in the interview where you think, oh, he's the son, nepotism,
Right.
He gets everything. But he actually had a really hard road. And one of his really key points was, paving your way and paying your dues. And I thought that was so important. There is no substitution for hard work, and there is a system in place in the recording industry. You start as an intern, start fetching coffee or making sandwiches or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend Candace Stewart at East West Studios said this great quote: if I can't trust you to get a sandwich order right, how am I going to trust you with a $500,000 console?
Right.
So it's a test. And
let alone clients, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a service-based industry.
Absolutely. Paul is a big proponent on going after the thing that fulfills you, that drives you. And for people who are trying to break into the recording industry, maybe as an engineer or a mixer or just an artist, a manager, or anybody who's trying to figure out their path, he's saying how important it is to just go after it with reckless abandon.
Yeah, and not rely on other people to give it to you. Absolutely.
It's all about going after that thing. It's not going to be easy. And he mentions a comment or a quote to a well-known industry guy. I won't give the name away, but it's
secret.
It's basically just spotlighting that tenacity that you need and to just block out all the noise. Doesn't matter if people believe in you, get it. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter about your parents, about your friends, what anyone says. If this is your dream, if it fulfills you, go forward. And the overarching theme is awareness and perspective, and realizing your actions now are helping you for your dreams in the future. And I just love that. He has done his work.
He has. He's a father, a surfer.
And he can put apart any mechanical thing. It's so interesting that his brain is half engineer and half spiritual, surfer.
Exactly. His technical acumen is top notch. He walked us through there and
I didn't understand anything.
It was amazing. It was so cool.
I'm so excited for this interview.
Yeah. So without further ado, here is the Mental Notes Podcast, episode number 2 with Paul Grundman. Paul Grundman.
Sir.
Welcome to the Mental Notes Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
How did you get your start in all of this big, wonderful music industry?
Well, the funny thing is you'll hear a lot of people have a, I don't know if it's a satisfying answer. It happens to you as opposed to you happening to it. And yes, there's proximity factors. There's my dad, going, hey, you want to come with me to the studio on a Saturday? And when I was a kid and, listening to whatever the radio station was, I think it was KIQQ, 100.3, whatever that was. Listening to those old radio stations, which were just pop radio in the 80s, and going to A&M Records, actually this would be late 70s, and just kind of going with him to A&M Records and being around the equipment and seeing it and just sort of sitting in the room and then walking up, and every once in a while he'd be like, hey, can you hear this frequency? And he'd tweak the thing, and he'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I can even hear this one anymore. And I remember my teeth hurting and going, yeah, I hear it. And it was 18K or something. And those were funny moments to remember because this is old days A&M. This is when, your idea of an old recording studio was sort of this semi-lit, wood paneling, very 70s kind of thing. And it was great to kind of grow up around that. It sort of hit me immediately that, music was important. I was 5 years old listening to 3 different things, which was the Beach Boys, this is, by the way, I wasn't around for these people when they were in their prime.
Right.
We're talking about early 80s.
Yeah.
So it should be new wave. It should be something like that. But what I was listening to was the Beach Boys Endless Summer album, the Sgt. Pepper's album, and Old Kiss or something like that. And these are 3 completely polar opposite places. But because of those harmonies in the Beach Boys, I was hooked immediately. And I remember I picked up Sgt. Pepper's out of my dad's pile of, you can do whatever you want with these albums. They're not my jazz and classical, go ahead.
Right.
And even though he had a lot of adoration for those things, they just weren't like his big picks. And I remember those albums having a huge effect on me. Emotionally speaking, I still note how when I'm building harmonies to this day, because I'm not just a mastering engineer, do other stuff, that I'm hearing that sort of harmonic Beach Boys thing. And they're so beautiful that like, if you stop and go and check out a couple of those songs, I mean, you'll just be like, how did this ever happen? How did it never happen again? It's one of those things. It's like seeing an incredible car or somebody, an invention of something that's just going to blow your mind. And it's funny, producing and things like that, I didn't think about. I always thought about the bands and the artists. I always thought, oh, what's a producer? These bands are where it's at. They're the ones making the magic happen. Why do I have to care about what that is?
I'm the same way. When I got into music, it was like learning. It was about the sound, like that connection with the sound and the way it made me feel. I'd never really thought about the engineer and the producer and all the other pieces at all. At all. It was all about the feeling and the emotion behind music, the up, the down, the sad, and all that other stuff.
You were really kind of romantically involved with the music and not so much the technical, what makes it work. And I was too.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of emulate those great players. And the engineering thing happened sort of in the way that you would say, nobody else was going to do it, so I was going to do it.
Yes.
And so it was naturally coming to me because I didn't see it as a problem.
Right.
I'm not going to go on, the life story. I'm just saying that like those 3 albums when I was 5 years old, that wasn't all it was. It was a lot of pop music too. And then those are big markers of moments I can recall. And you're saying how I got into it. It's just sort of like, I heard the music and I wanted to emulate it. And I think everybody out there, when I'm helping people to, it happens because I talk to people and I want to know what makes them tick because I'm genuinely interested in
You've already figured me out. You led me into a couple of bad jokes.
It didn't take that long. And then I was like, really? And then you actually got me into it, just like, boom.
You said you're into neuroscience as well.
I'm into what makes us think, and I think it's fun and funny when you can trick the brain and it's just one of those things where they're brain teasers or it's like
jokester
the thing.
Stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it could be stuff where it's just every engineer knows at least the tale of, where somebody's like, give me more of this or more of that. And you make a gesture like you've turned up something.
Right. And then mentally,
you're hearing more of that 3K or
right.
that thing that you hate so much. And I'm coming back to that too much. You say, how about now? And they go, whatever you just did is great. And you may not have done anything. Right. And that's sort of the power of
placebo.
selective. And placebo effect does work if it is making a difference. So, many times it's about shifting the way that you're listening, and that's for sure. But all through that sort of period we were talking about, those formidable years where you're trying to emulate stuff, in recording, there was a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
So as I went through that, and I still wanted to be like the best drummer in the world, so I played along to all the Rush and all the Dave Weckl and all those guys.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to play so many notes that nobody wanted to hire me. That's a good joke for people who are drummers. Yeah. Hey, well, everybody wants to, she goes prog rock. And you try to bring that to the pop station or pop page, if you want to call it that.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
No.
And you kind of go, well, why? Why that drummer, and the testosterone takes over and you're like, hey, I could take him. Every drummer who's a
aggro
15-year-old drummer who can play a lot of licks looks at other drummers like I could take him. 25 maybe looks like, I don't know. I haven't done the whole working out thing, but there's a point where I looked at the 30-year-old guy when I was 15. And I go like, what does this guy have that I don't have? And I'd look at him and then like, I don't get it. And then when I was 30, I was like, I get it, because my old teacher that I went to said, we're just learning to work with gravity all our lives. And so
that's a great saying.
When you're working with gravity, you learn how to not have to force everything, but let it work for you. And it's that sort of maturity in a beat. And when I went and saw, of all people, I think it was, oh man, I can't remember what it was, like a Tori Amos show or something. And whoever was playing that night just blew my mind. And it was one of these things where I was just like, I get it. It has to be, time is just as important as the song. And when I worked at Jackson Browne's studio, I'd see my idols of drumming coming in.
Yeah.
And I'd see them just playing straight time. And I'm like, I can hear your splash cymbal through, 3 feet of concrete, and I know it's you. And I'd see him playing time in such a way that was incredible that I realized like it is just as hard to play all the crazy tricks as it is to play time in the right way. So then when I started writing music more and started producing music more, I realized what my job was. So by allowing myself to move beyond just an instrumentalist, it allowed me to be a better engineer, because in making those songs come together, talking to an artist, how do we want to put the song together, getting their drummer in there and being like, I would fire this guy. And I'm like, I would have done that, back in the day.
Yeah.
So you realize when you get a perspective and people say, you're supposed to play instruments as if you're in the audience listening. Go, yeah, I'm in the audience praising you. No, that's not what I mean. It's like, if you can listen to the song being played back from another perspective, you'll know better what to put into the song instead of playing over it.
Exactly. I think that's so much of being young, because I'm reminded of what I was like when you get out in the real world.
Yeah.
And all you want to do is prove that you're an adult. You want to prove you have this thing that you have to go out and be like, I can do this, I can do that. And for you, for good, for drumming, you're like, look at all these things I can do, all the bells and whistles. And you're just constantly kind of shoving this image down people's throat. I was getting into radio and, getting on air, and everyone's just like, you're up here, just bring it down here. Like, you're good. Like, just take a deep breath.
You're doing like an overactor move?
Yeah. No, just chill. Like, because I wanted to be the personality. I was just like, all this and all that. And then as I get older, I'm 31 now, it's like, I want to be my authentic self on air. And I'm so happy to be here for this podcast because I don't have to act. We can have real conversations and make real connections and learn about people's, intentions and where they came. So it's just been, you just chill out. As you get older, is what I'm trying to say.
And if you don't mind me interjecting, I know you're going to say something. It was like, that was some of the premise that you made that made me just go, let's get together, because all of the storytelling and all that stuff is fine, and it's good for people who might want to know. But I, having that half of a dark cloud over myself, and healthfully so, sort of like, who gives a crap about me? And part of me goes, well, might as well share that. Part of me goes, I don't feel like I'm all that great, but that's a good thing to have a little bit of that so that you are striving.
I agree with that. There's like almost, to a degree, a healthy component to some of the things that we place on ourselves, like some of the pressures, some of the internal monologue or dialogue that's, if you let it go too far, it becomes problematic. And I've dealt with, going way beyond that threshold so many times.
They call that depression.
Exactly.
Or they call it self-entitlement, that one, the other direction.
Yeah.
Where you think you're so great that everybody should listen to you. Like most of the people who are like, I'm a producer for 4 months, I should be signed by whatever. I'm like, it took me 4 months to go through a freaking album once. Like,
you understand I'm a genius? Why don't you understand?
Well, yeah, there's that. And that's another thing that I like to tell people is like, when you're trying to get the attention of somebody and you're trying to do it, like you work in social media and you have worked in that and you understand that people are like, you'll see a bot sort of do an auto comment. I'm like, do you not know that makes me go like this to you? Like when I see that, or like, and I ban you, like, it's like, don't do that. And the reason for that is like, we're actually all striving for some real human contact, even though we're all robots on a screen.
Yeah.
And this was the reason why we spoke over at social media, that we got together, because
I Black Mirror stuff right here.
Well, I like to use the smallest modality that I can and try to get the most out of it, right? So we have Twitter. I've met some of the greatest engineers and producers, artists, through mere conversation and being able to detect by the way that their sort of cadence and how they write, where their head's at. And that's sort of a pattern, sort of, that's where profiling works great, because if you understand everything we do is sort of building patterns. And when you sort of see how people are and the way that they're welcoming you into certain things, as opposed to, hey, listen to my song, it's on SoundCloud. It's like, do you realize that that's a command?
Yes.
That's actually a command. You think we're just, nobody's doing anything all day long, and we're just waiting.
All vomiting.
I'm waiting for you to just tell me to listen to your SoundCloud. It takes an hour to listen to something and reply to somebody.
Yeah, it's contributing to the chorus of white noise. And there's no distinction. There's no
Bring
reason.
me some flowers, dude.
No connection. Yeah, what's my connection
dinner
to it?
First, jeez.
Exactly.
And it's important to court people, in the right way. Be a human being. You'd be surprised at how much
we talked about that on the phone.
Yeah.
This thing where learning the decorum.
Yeah.
Especially in the industry.
There's no decorum anymore with the kids. And I hate to sound like an old guy saying kids, but people who've learned...
Goddamn millennials.
Ruining...
Everything, all industries. Every
X.
Yeah, every article is like, millennials are ruining this, millennials are ruining that.
Did they say we were ruining stuff when we were kids, though? Did they?
Yeah.
Everyone. Every generation. Stuff. Think of Elvis and when he came out.
Oh, man, he was ruining it all.
Oh, yeah.
Ruining it all.
Purity was out the window.
I think we only have...
It's that foolishness of the rule of jazz, close enough for jazz. It's like you know the rules and then you break them and you add and add your own flair. But if you never actually took the time to learn the rules,
learn the basics.
Well, and I mean, when you're a kid and man, F you to the man sort of is in your blood.
Yeah.
Parental problems aside that people have that show in other ways in their character. There's a certain point where no matter how good your upbringing is, you kind of want to, like you said, assert yourself. Whether it's female or male, there's a place where you want to be independent and an adult. And a lot of kids, or a lot of people, I should just say, coming up, young adults, or people that are just trying to be heard, and they're trying to get a handle on something. They're just trying to get sort of like the special button pressing code so they can become a rock star or whatever it is. Whereas,
where's this magic pill?
They don't realize that they think it's the old guy telling them, hey, you got to get to school and work and be hardworking. They're like, ah, shut up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be smarter than you. And it's like, there isn't anything that can outsmart experience.
Yeah.
And, you hate hearing that when you're just want to get your first set of car keys and drive a car, and your mom goes, yeah, but you don't have the experience. And you're like, experience. Like, I'll figure
it out.
You're like, look, I can play freaking whatever, auto game like crazy. That's the only experience I need. I can play Grand Theft Auto. Why can't I drive this car? Well, I proved 3 times that I had horrible experience. 3 times meaning 3 different cars that got crashed.
Yeah.
The point is that the experience part of it is everything. And you have to be willing to say, I want to end up here anyway. Please take me. I'll work for free, basically.
Yeah,
and then you use that. You can use that in any walk of life.
You pay your dues, essentially.
Yeah. And what are those dues? You don't have to look forward to them. You'll get them in all forms. All that there is to it in the simplicity of life is sort of to find out what it is that you want to do, and kind of put yourself in proximity with those that do it well, and just sort of make mention to them, show them your passion. And usually people want to have people who are passionate about what you are around. And it seems like a very no shit Sherlock sort of story. I don't know if this is NC-17.
It is.
It is good. But to end that idea, it's very simple. And people do ask me from time to time, what is my opinion on X, Y, or Z? Meaning, schooling, doing this or the other thing. We want to get this funding for that. And it's like, look, all of the greats, and I don't mean to compare anybody to anybody in literal terms, but anybody who has achieved a certain amount of success that is sort of blaze their own trail, really just kind of knew what they wanted to do and found a way to do it. And that doesn't mean going... They
were resourceful.
And it doesn't mean going out and, knocking over a liquor store. It means, if you don't have the money to make an album, find the way to do it on a budget that doesn't even exist. And people say, well, we don't have a budget for this. It's like, I've never had a budget.
Yeah.
I've gone around to people that I met and said, hey, what's your non-resentful fee that you'll play on this song for me? And they'd be like, well, that's the way you said. I was like, I don't want you resentful. I want you to play your guitar the best way you can play it.
Of course.
And usually that rate is a certain amount of money that's very nominal, and lunch. Or, you just go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm so passionate about this. Coming up in the industry, I've only been in pro audio for 4 or 5 years, and I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a musician. So I'm definitely at a disservice, or not a disservice, but I don't understand it. Disadvantage. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. But I have learned so much.
I could tell. You pointed stuff out immediately. Like, does that? I was
yeah.
Like, okay.
There you go. So I have learned so much by just taking people to lunch. And I think everyone wants to reach that point in their career where they want someone to ask them advice. Most of your life, you're like, hey, can I take you out to lunch? Can I pick your brain? Hey, can I help you? Can I follow you around for free? I'll staple papers and deliver stuff. But then someone will come up to you and say, you're where I want to be.
Yeah.
Please let me know how I can get there. This is what I'm thinking, but I just want to take you to lunch, buy you a drink, do whatever.
And I keep thinking, I hope you get somewhere further than I ever get. I mean, in my mind, I don't have that huge sense of like, yes, you want to make it here, buddy.
Yeah.
I'm actually just
buy my book for $19.99.
Right. And I've said before, I'd love to do a Hyatt seminar that was $50 a person, but I would probably say, hey, welcome. You can have your money back, because the only way to really, achieve this is to, get your own therapist on a daily basis. Not me. Tony Robbins can work for many people, but people have called me the Tony Robbins of Rock many times because I've sat around people who feel like they're in a slump. And one thing that does make me excited is to see that light reignite. I think it's not a secret. Many people in the music business, or whatever business, they get tied down. Maybe they're doing too many drugs, whatever they're doing. Maybe they're depressed from something else. We were talking about this as part of your podcast. I was no stranger to having things take over my life, and to the point of near death many times. That's kind of why I've worked twice as hard the last 10 years, because I'm sort of, I guess, making up for lost time. But I'm very grateful to be able to have a chance again. And that's sort of part of what...
And share your knowledge.
But it's more about finding a way to have somebody stoked on themselves and see their dreams through. Yeah. It's not even about like what I can give them. It doesn't even matter what you do. It literally, I've talked to a waiter, and I'm talking to them saying like, well, what did you do before? And they're like, oh yeah, I used to be a photographer. I'm like, well, what happened? It's like, well, well, do what happened? They said, well, I just sort of, the industry. I'm like, well, don't you enjoy doing it? It's like, and I just start talking to the server.
Go take some photos.
And I'm like, do you still have your camera? And I'm like, I'm literally doing this thing to them where their brain is moving and they're going, I'm giving them permission, but they're giving themselves permission.
Yes.
And
powerful.
what it is it's sort of this thing where like, I always tell people, find your surfing, whatever that is. Well, what is that? Spicoli. People say you work so much. And I'm like, yes, I do. But I put time in to make it so that the well is not dry. And the way that is done is you have to carve time out literally to fill that well back up. And how do I do that?
Self-care.
You have to find that thing that really you enjoy doing that doesn't have that sort of like, well, I go to yoga. It's like, that works. That's actually partially there. There's a certain amount of something that you have to do that would be nice if it were partially physical because the blood moving helps with mental health. Mm-hmm. And also something that doesn't require a certain sort of checking in unless that's part of the stoke, if you will.
Yeah.
That sort of excitement. And sometimes for people, it could be something as simple as, taking a walk and just listening to an audiobook. It could be something like that. But it's got to be something.
Unplug.
Yeah. Or taking all of the information coming in out so that you can get into a Zen state. And that means nothing else matters but what is about to happen. A lot of people who do things like surfing also love golfing. Why? It's totally polar opposite physically. But when you're about to swing and hit that golf ball, nothing else matters in the world. And for those that have active minds like me, to find something that can make your brain turn off for a second is actually one of the greatest things you can do. And it's hard if you're going to try to meditate. Oh, my brain's going on. It's very hard to do that. So I would always tell people like who are saying, oh, I'm having a hard time coming up with this, coming up with that, coming up with this musical ideas. Yeah. And I'm like, well, you're just letting yourself being led by your plugins and your ideas aren't coming forth and telling you which plugin to do. Right. It's this sort of which one should I go for? And I used to write for EQ and Recording Magazine. And I remember I made this article about how to make a hit vocal in 3 steps. And it was like, whoa, what's that? And they wanted to know, oh, it sounds like a great idea. Because I was doing these short articles. I'm like, I want a 2-page, I want a 2-page spread. It's going to be a picture. Do you have pictures of what you're doing on screen? Yeah. They're the 2-page, but they indulged my sarcasm, which was the 3 steps was 3 takes. And it's sort of no, but it's true. Like force yourself not to go and do 75 takes of a vocal. You think about it like you're shooting a movie. And some of the best directors, how many takes do they have in them where they break down crying about their past, their lost child, and they're going to be bawling tears? You got to think of about every song kind of like that kind of a performance. Yeah. And back in the day when you had tape and you're like, we only have 2 tracks left on the 24 track. We got to get this vocal down in this take or the next one and cut them together because that's all we got. That singer focused and they said, okay, I got to put it all into this take. And they would. You have to give them a similar sense of that sort of urgency in the sense that we only have this. You have to set the stage as a producer to be able to make them feel comfortable enough to sing their hearts out. Sure. You have to sometimes make yourself a fool. You have to sometimes pretend you're singing their part so they hear how lousy you sound.
Right.
In a way, they'll outdo you by showing you what they got.
Yes.
And in sort of like, you have to show that you're willing to get your hands dirty, be a silly person. Sometimes it's about not being that and letting them, sometimes they're bigger producers than they are vocalists and you have to let them run the whole thing. As a producer, you have to learn how to make the environment the best for that artist to flourish. And if you see an artist who's getting cramped by your miking and they're not feeling open, you
they
see
can't
them,
move.
And then you're being a horrible producer. There's so many stories of that happening where they found a way to make the artist comfortable and they were the assistant and all of a sudden the assistant became their person. Henry Louis, it comes to mind, who when he was working, he was literally just trying to do his best as an assistant. And when he was able to make that artist feel great, she was like, you're going to do all my albums. So there you go.
Right, there it is. You said dealing with some issues as you were coming along in life. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to you prior to this. You said that there was a point where things started to, your perspective changed.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Sure. Where there's a bunch of points in life where perspectives change the most. And for me, and I think for a lot of people they can. And I used to say to people who had, high school sweethearts and they said we grew apart and I said 25 and they go, it was at 25. I go, I got it.
I got divorced at 24.
That's what I'm saying. That's right. And of course, plus or minus 1 year, of course. And some people grow up faster. They lose a parent and they have to become the parent and they have to grow up very fast. There's a lot of variables on this, but there's
You are the Tony Robbins of rock and roll.
It is now confirmed.
Or of just audio. I don't know. Who knows? Or of careers. I don't know. I don't even want to be that guy. I just want to say that I like that people can be excited about something new that they didn't think they were before or they feel like they can't do. And I like to be able to be there to tell them that they can, because really we're not supposed to sit around and flog ourselves.
Yeah.
We think we are, and
I'm really good at it though.
I'm really good at it. I talked about the dark cloud.
Yeah.
What takes one to know one.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and people say, "What do you mean afraid of failure, afraid of success?" I mean, these are all interesting problems that actually exist. I think the failure of rejection would be the number one thing on most the aforementioned millennials' minds, because there's no rejection.
Or not living up to your true potential, because we're always said that,
driven by it.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want and have your job work for you. And so we are not built in with that work ethic of sometimes it's going to be hard and sometimes we have to do things that we don't want to do. We think that our job or our work should always be serving our passion, that we should always be totally filled and content with our work, with our relationship.
And not challenged.
And
it's sort of, but the thing is,
I don't know if challenge is the right word, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I came up in the self-esteem generation beginning, which was the period of time where they started to tell kids
participation ribbons
right. And actually, I do remember the honorable mention ribbon and wondering, I was confused. Yeah. Actually, I know that's good to actually give certain people, awards for
most improved,
for certain things that are important to let us know that we all made it there but understand that that's what that's for. It's like, you want to be, striving for success. The Elon Musk occurs in you because you want to follow your dream of creating what it is that you want to create.
Yes.
You want to be better than everybody else at it. But also, if you're able to see through certain things, and I'm using an interesting person there, but let's just say anybody that's successful, that's sort of made a name for themselves in a certain area, they weren't taking pages out of a book from somebody else.
No.
The Vinnie Colaiutas and the Chick Coreas, all these guys that were jazz, they got thrown out of music school.
They're blazing their own path.
They were too. I mean, I think. Well, I won't talk about that, but certain people got thrown out of school because they were like dealing pot. But they became incredible musicians that everybody's
entrepreneurship.
From your mouth to God's ears. And so what I'm trying to say is that, there's all of these things. The good news is there's no real workbook, but the bad news is that you got to work effing hard to here's what I told people also, is like, success doesn't feel like you won the lottery. You're going to turn around and go, it feels about right, because you've worked so effing hard and gone up every staircase, and it feels like a lateral move half the time. So most of the time it's going to feel like a lateral move when you're gaining experience. But the thing is, and this is something why I was talking about military guys that I love, that I could trust, that have learned how to, go up the rung, is a lot of people that the entitlement thing, they don't understand they have to start here and then go to here and go to here. And then that they should wear that with a certain sort of badge. I mean, I remember, sweeping the parking strip at Jackson Browne's going, I can't wait to think back on this day one day.
Right.
I know that I'm going to think about when I painted the parking strip, when I went down to Huntington Beach, or where was I? Went down to pick up a surfboard in a propane-powered SUV, or was a Suburban, something like that. These are great stories, and I went to get the food for so-and-so, and like there wasn't ketchup, and I had to run back and get the ketchup, and those things. And it's like, I always tell people, here's the kind of guy you want to be if you're a runner. If you forget something, you say, oh, I forgot that, and you start running. You don't do the thing, which is that okay? You don't do that.
No.
Those people are paying
too.
You fix it.
You run, and you hope that they run after you going, it's cool, we don't need it. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You're looking for that because if that person comes to your business or whatever and says, I want to work and do this for you.
Right.
And you say, okay, well, I don't like hiring and firing people. I mean, that's how you are. Those people come in with that sort of energy, and it's great. And if they want to learn, I say put yourself in the trenches, like we're saying.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we left a few loose ends there. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, can you give us some personal examples from your life that you had a shift or a change in your ideology?
I totally skated that, pardon.
You gave us all the wisdom, but how did you get there?
Well, I would say that as a teen, I wanted to be, the best drummer, as I was talking about. And I was like, my friends were going to Berklee School of Music. I went there for 2 weeks, and I'm like, F this. I'm not going to be in this winter like this. I'm going to go to like a drum teacher in LA, and I'm going to go to like Cal Arts or something. Of course, I went to like CSUN or something, and because my friends went there, and I wanted to stay around home. I like this weather. I got to admit it. I'm soft. But, all those that move here, they do become soft in a good way too. This is a great climate to live in.
It's currently like 80 degrees outside in November. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so what happened was the shift that was the biggest for me at that time would probably have been from sort of seeing others that were doing what I was trying to do, but realized it was either really far away but attainable or somewhat close and attainable. There's this two moments where you're going, I've got all these skills I think that I've developed, and yet they're not able to be exploited or whatever, because I thought that when I was, like I was saying with these self-esteem trainers, I was sort of pumped up in my head already. I thought I was a little bit more than I was. A friend of mine came back from the aforementioned Berklee School of Music and says, dude, we suck. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, dude, we suck. I'm telling you. And this was my friend Eric Lynn, who,
Yikes.
if he's even watching, I want to say hi to Eric, but who later on has gone on to he was Jackson Browne's also, but he left and said, hey, you want to work here? And I said, this is the other one. I do. I was working as
yes, please.
in sales, and I was working because I wanted to just, rebuild my life from effing up too much. Uh-huh. And I was taught to kind of, get a job and take care of myself and handle my own stuff. People used to tell me, by the way, they go, oh, your dad's pretty Grundman. You got it made. And everybody goes, you got it made. I was like, I thought I had it made because my friends would tell me that. I'm like, okay, I guess I do. Guess what, everybody?
Cool.
The playing field is actually as level as it's ever been, and it always has been leveled. It's up to you to pull yourself out of your own, whatever it is in your head, and just go towards what it is you want to do. And I realized that by being sort of apathetic or expectant, or a little bit of both, literally like having that entitlement and apathetic, whatever it was, because nobody's going to come to your house and tell you, hey, I want to sign you.
No.
I realized how hard it was, obviously having a clear head and not doing drugs or anything like that, and alcohol, came that out of my head. Being able to sort of learn how to be a human being again was sort of, I guess I sort of avoided it immediately because that was the biggest part of it. And some people are sort of shy about it, and I don't, necessarily like to, but I will say the biggest shift in my life was stopping using drugs and alcohol. I mean, that was like the biggest thing.
But then you start really feeling your feelings, and it's a process of like you said, becoming a human and realizing how to cope with things. You can't go run and do this anymore. So, okay, I need more tools in my toolbox.
Right.
And that's where all this wisdom that I think is wisdom from you is coming from, because you've been through it and you've been to, the depths and come back.
There's the 12 steps they talk about. People go, ooh, that sounds like a cult. And the thing that's great about it is it's not.
But you get cool chips.
Well, it's not even, I mean, I'd love to, the thing that's great about it is that I've talked to my wife before about when we were just dating, and she's like, this is stuff people should all use.
Absolutely.
For all life. And it's like, these are just like they're like 10 commandments, but they're like things that you can do. Mm-hmm. They're like actual workbook things that nobody's going to check in on you. Nobody's going to ask for money. There's no cult involved here.
Right.
You don't have to take God in your life at all. You can actually use just something outside of yourself. You can just say, as long as it's not me controlling everything, that you just sort of have a way of saying, when I'm left to my own devices, I choose poorly usually. If that's something that you can resonate with, then perhaps that sort of process may help you, because pretty much every addict can't regulate and do things the right way. But then when I got into cleaning up my act and realizing, and there's sort of you have to sort of take that discipline on yourself and sort of learn how to take direction and be accountable. And that sort of started to really change the way that I saw the world and how everybody has to really work for everything. And when I worked for Jackson, I really realized every step that is overlooked in the process of making an album.
Yeah.
And when they wanted me to work full time there, I'd been there for 3 years as a runner. I don't think they've ever had a runner for 3 years, and it was a studio assistant that long. And it was so much work, and you'd go home from seeing this Neve console. I remember going home to my then girlfriend. I don't think we were married yet. I had a couple nights where I broke down. I was like, it's so hard to be in front of all these magical tools and not be able to use them.
Right.
And,
hid in a candy shop.
This happens to everybody. I'm just trying to say, everybody out there, there's pain that we all go home with, that we want to be those guys in there.
Yeah.
We want to be making the music, but we have to stand our ground and know that the real affirmations come from the job being done well. And you should actually find those affirmations in yourself. Now, I've chosen, and my aforementioned friend, Eric, who said he wanted to manage studios differently if he had his way. And he got his way. He manages Shangri-La Studios and Rick Rubin's stuff. He's
Beautiful
like his right hand guy. And it's a terrific thing, because he sort of is the thing that he wanted. He became exactly what he said he would have liked to have seen in another place.
Yeah.
And I believe he now manages Jackson's studio. So as well.
Okay.
So okay.
It works out.
And the thing is that those are the kind of stories that people say, but he had this, but he has I'm going to tell you what Eric had. Eric lived on the corner in Barrington, but his dad had an apartment. He and I would get together. He was in my first band. He went and found where, sorry, Eric, if you're watching this is a funny story though. He found out where Jackson Browne.
It stays between us and Facebook
just
Live.
us and
the entire world.
And it's actually a very endearing story, because he found out where Jackson's kid played baseball, or he knew that Jackson showed up at the local park.
See, it's endearing, but it sounds like stalking.
It's absolutely
Starting
stalking.
off that way, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
most of my dating life. So if you ever anyone else
understood,
needs help,
don't do this. Yeah. But he approached him at one point and was like, I'm a big fan and that kind of thing. And I think the earnestness, this takes us back to the other thing. How do you get involved? Being honest with the way that you're approaching somebody and being sort of just honest about how your intentions are, that comes across so much more than look at my resume.
Right.
My resume, you're overqualified. You don't want to be a runner. You're not going to make any money. And people don't realize, I want to be this guy. I want to enter into the studio to do this. I want to apprentice that person. If you want to be a great mixing engineer, find your favorite mixer and go and say, hey, I'd love to come by one day for a tour and just meet you and see if there's any chemistry even.
Yeah.
I mean, literally create your own ability to meet this person is a way to do it. I've had a guy talk to me and say, I want to go and, then his end game was they'll have no chance but to put me on this show. And I thought, I don't really want to have that. I'd much rather have them feel stoked to put me on there. I want them to go, hey, I want to give you a hand here, because everybody gives each other a hand. Oh, it's who you know. Yeah, okay, guess what? Everybody in the world needs to know somebody. You aren't going to be in the middle of some place that knows
help.
But you need to also go, I need help. And you need to also go, I need help here, and I need to also look for direction and take it. You're like, I've got all this brain and all this knowledge and I'm not famous. It's like, you need to actually go out and meet somebody that's going to say, hey, I like what you're doing. I'm going to help you with this. And then there's another person that says, there's 1,000 people that you meet that help you in ways you had no idea you're going to help you.
Totally agree. And also being willing.
No, it's all about taking direction, especially when I had 10, 15 years, a 30-year-old guy going in as a runner.
Yeah.
I say when you're 17, you got it. Don't wait till when I was like 29 or whatever. It's very humbling to be 29 years old, 2 years sober, whatever I was, going into Jackson Browne's studio.
Making $7 an hour,
$10 an hour, driving a Chevy Lumina, looks like a dustbuster and has no front suspension. The thing goes like, whoo, whoo, on every bump.
Sounds very dangerous.
It was awesome.
I can relate to that whole thing. I did a major shift. I went back to school, did all that stuff. And I found myself interning, at 28, 29
there you go.
In North Hollywood. And it was very humbling.
Yes.
But I was also of the mindset of the dedication and hard work will pull me through this. And man, like you're saying, you go back because, it was a rough day or, someone gave you a bunch of crap and you didn't really know how to deal with it maybe.
Internalize it.
It ties in. Yeah, you internalize it. And that was me learning, my tool set or my skill set of coping with that. But saying, okay, I have to get back up tomorrow morning. And at that point, I was taking a bus out from, the San Gabriel Valley out to North Hollywood.
Oh, my God.
To intern on days off from school, where I was also interning in the studio.
That work alone is like the discipline you learn to get on that bus.
Yeah, man.
It's hard to wake up.
It was super hard. Well, no, you know what? I got up because it was something I was passionate about.
There you go.
I didn't have the time. I didn't have a hard time getting up, but it was a hard time of being, I can see myself there. I want to go there faster. And I dealt with that where I was all, full of piss and vinegar about it and just like hardcore aggro on and I found out that doesn't work.
Right.
I'm hurting myself.
So I definitely have a question for you. What advice would you give your younger self or somebody who is coming up in the industry that's frustrated and wants to get out there? Like,
I would say everybody who's ever been your age has felt this way. I know that you feel all of your feelings so strongly and that you feel like you're the only person who's ever had their heart broken. You're the only person that's ever had it. And you've got to talk about it on Instagram everywhere. And woe is me, these feelings. But guess what? You're going to have 100 more of these heartbreaks in different ways. So just know that if you've just been depressed by something that's happened, that is what makes you capable of greater things. Because I used to say at the end of these videos, now go on and do great things.
Right.
Because I really want people to go on and do great things. And it's so earnest. I mean, we talked about this. It's like, I want to make the world a better place. Silicon Valley jokes, right? Through social media. Well, the only way you can actually make things better is by doing something that makes you feel really great. And not just feel great, but something that is fulfilling. The fulfillment is the important part. So I would say, don't be concerned with the end success. Follow where you really feel like you would stay up all night and sleep very little to do. And that these heartbreaks you're feeling or these barriers, they are only as big as you make them. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but the thing is, the problem I think I had as a kid and other people have is, I want the secret. It's like, guess what? Here's what you have to do. look at the target you're going for. And then I want you to aim at it and fire at it with an Uzi, like the great Gene Simmons said. If you want to fire at a target, you got to have an Uzi machine gun. You got to shoot at it. And I love the way he said, you don't stop. Just keep firing away. And I thought, I love that he said that. And I remembered that was a pivotal moment, actually. And everybody who's hung out with me long enough knows that I've pulled that out because it really is true. It is a numbers thing on some level about trying, but it's also about following that heart and being able to do it. And that also sounds like a bumper sticker. And I want to be able to pull away from things that sound like cliches. And I want to give some real meat on the bone here, which is that there isn't one way to, quote unquote, write a hit record or whatever it is. It's about finding a way to be honest with the way you're expressing and then package that. And if that means it's going to be done in a construction site and being a guy who's going to be developing a new kind of steel frame, that can excite you. Just like you said, architecture. I get excited by architecture as well. I want to know how it fits together. How can it work? How can it support itself? And if that excites you, you really should go and apprentice that person that you really, that you love. And don't just look for an independent way of just like, I'm going to be famous on my own. You really need to do it with other people in the world. And that's what I would say. Yeah. Align yourself with other people. Put your proximity. I would have told myself also, don't be so isolated, such an introvert. Go ahead and get out there and meet more people. Go hang around people that have struck gold before, because if you want to strike gold, find somebody else that struck gold. And then maybe you will too. And actually, it's very true. And I mean, I didn't learn that till later, so much later.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I'm so still in that same place of teach me, mm-hmm. just like at the studio and mastering. Where
lifelong learning.
Well, when we're doing these things like, technically, testing out stuff, we're doing it from a place that says, tell us the data. We don't know better yet. We want to know better once our ears test. And we want to do it not knowing what is behind door number 1, 2, or 3. Mm-hmm. So the way that we're able to sort of stay neutral and listen to a new piece of gear and then test the other piece of gear and then have an independent person play back those 3 things and have us write down which one sounded the most like A, B, or C.
Yeah.
And then if all the engineers we find are unanimous, mm-hmm. that's a clinical way of proving something.
Sure.
Because it's a blind test.
Yeah.
It is not just opinion. It's stuff that every time I would write an article, I'd show it to our head tech and I'd show it to my dad and make sure that it followed along all of the theories and the things that we found to be true. Mm-hmm. And then it would go to publication and people would go, you're ruining your dad's reputation with this. I'm like, I wanted to drop the mic and walk out.
Yeah. Well, all those things that you're saying about this, like this very technical, is very white paper almost, it's very matter of fact.
Right.
We can apply those principles to our lives through those experiences and say, well, I'm saying these things maybe to younger Paul or younger Mike or younger Nicole, or to the person who's feeling a certain way about where they're headed right now and saying, I'm giving you this guidance mm-hmm. and it's based on something that's fact. And they will maybe go, oh, well, you're just telling me because you think you know better and that doesn't apply to me. But sure, okay, maybe it doesn't. But there's always something within the message that you can take and go, okay, I hear that and I want to apply that to my life in some way, because people who take the time to give you that advice, to sit down with you and talk to you, or maybe it's in a passing comment, especially in studio world and being in there, your mentors, you don't even realize, I didn't realize that I was being mentored. Mm-hmm. It was some tough love. And then all of a sudden hey, we have time to, can you run this session for this
all of
short
a sudden
panel?
This happened.
It came out of nowhere. And that's when you have to rise to
You were fighting in your head beforehand going, wait, I thought you guys heard what I was saying in my head.
Yeah. I had something like that happen to me and I was nervous as hell, but it's what I wanted. And I rose to the occasion. And it wasn't just some dinky thing. It was like a Disney vocal demo. And it was like, what? And they're just like smiling at me.
Right.
And I'm like,
you're the man all of a sudden.
Okay.
Here's your shot, kid.
And, that doesn't mean that I wasn't nervous and that I didn't kind of flub in certain things, but, I just stayed focused and rode with it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those, again, listening to those mentors or listening to those people giving advice, now I'm like, whoa, mind blown,
Yeah. Well, this is just where I would like to encourage people to sort of stuff down that, whatever that is, that both that testosterone thing, we need to have some of that self-esteem going. But we also have to understand that there's a learning process for everybody who's gotten anywhere. And there's no way that you're actually already there, even though you have all of the, wherewithal to be there and to do what you want to be there to do. You just got to sit there and take those notes and sort of prove to the person that's next to you that you've gotten it there. And like you said, there are people that will kind of, push you back sometimes. I've seen teachers and that won't actually, they're not great teachers, or they just,
or they're intimidated,
or they're just trying to keep you at bay and get your money every week. There's that too. But you really need to know by your own results too. Or am I improving in this? Am I doing that? And do they seem, this guy didn't give me enough affirmations. It's like, well, how many do we need? We have to know how many do we need.
Yeah. How do you feel?
Yeah. It's important to know when, somebody somebody said you can manage two ways. You can catch somebody doing something right. You can catch them doing something wrong. And I thought, okay, I've had the catch you only when you're doing something wrong guy, which never give any affirmations. I've had the, gives you affirmations for when you're doing something right, and gives you encouraging ones, which is the healthy way to do it, which is sort of like we acknowledge you when you did something great, but not like over the moon crazy. But, hey, good job, kid, whatever it is, nice going is enough. That should be enough. We don't have to throw a birthday party at the thing and everybody show up and this stuff. And it's my birthday. Yeah, everybody has a birthday, kid. We're working today. It doesn't have to be that. But the point is, you're trying to impart information to kids at pivotal, or people at pivotal points where either they're unsure, or anybody, any age group, I guess.
Your peers. It could be they're going through a tough time.
Yeah, I think the tough time part thing is important, that people, this is the most important thing of this particular decade, which is everybody is not living the lives they are leading on Instagram. I don't care how much you think they are not leading the lives that they are showing you, because it is supposed to be a broadcast medium where we show you what we want you to show, what we want to show you. I'm not going to show you a picture of me crying into my pillow last night.
Right.
That's not going to get a lot of likes, or maybe it will. Point is, when you have these sort of feelings that are difficult, and you're thinking, I'm not supposed to have that, or something like that, or my folks told me being anxious isn't good for me, so I want to not be anxious.
You don't see it on social media. You don't see other people talking about it, and you have no reference. So you're like, everyone else is living this Insta famous life,
and they're not.
Yeah, and maybe I'm the only one, and that's the illusion of depression and anxiety. A lot of times is I'm the only one who feels like this.
You want to know the worst comment I've ever read that was said to me when I was performing in Panama with Celeste and it was actually a DJ show with a vocalist, and we had a sold out show there.
Nope.
The worst comment I've ever seen was lucky. Somebody said lucky. And I just thought, wow, mother, if I'm lucky, I am the most unlucky mother I've ever been. That was the censor. Because I thought, I know that there can be an honest way of saying that, which is fortunate, or, that good for you or whatever, but the way that it was done was like, because I like to rant, obviously. So I wrote and I said, listen, if it was luck, I've had the worst fucking luck of anybody I've ever known. The amount of walls I've banged my head into, the amount of rejections I've had, and people told me when I was going to be, oh, you have it made, your dad's, guess how many rejections I've had? There have been more rejections than I could count. People think that they're going to make music and they're going to be received well. I've write 5 little ditties of a song a week, and I have a partner, and I'll be like, this one, no, so many no's. But every once in a while, he's like, that one. And I'm like, yeah, I was feeling that one that day. And you know why? Because I wasn't doing it from this part of my brain. I was somehow using all of those things that I knew that were emotionally component, but I was also staying within the boundaries. See, we have this thing where we go, we're going to write music. So I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do this sort of thing where it's like, only me, and I'm not going to follow the way that anybody else. Guess what you're going to be? You're going to be the coffee house person who plays the song, that only can be played at the coffee house, meaning that those are the only people who are going to be listening to because they were subjected to it that night. And it's going to be a long diary where you go on and on and on and on, and you don't even care about the audience. Well, guess what? You're not reducing yourself if you take care of your audience. And you are an entertainer. We're all in sales. We're all in entertainment, and we're all in the service industry. I don't care what you do. You are being of service to the world if you are a janitor. You are of service to the world if you are being an orator. Whatever you're doing, we're all in sales and in the service industry. We're trying to be of service to other people, and so that they like our product if we're entertainers. And we have to take care of those audience members. And in part of that is learning how to craft music that will be best ingested. And we use the food analogy, where if I'm a chef and I like things really salty, and I make everything really salty because that's my way of doing it. So F you if you can't take it. I can't stand that sort of narrative. Well, that's who I am. And if you can't take it, get lost. It's like, guess what? You're going to be alone living in a shoe when you're 50. Because you need to be able to.
And you're going to have 16 kids.
Yeah, well, maybe. And what you have to do, compromise. People look at compromise as a negative
old lady
word.
that lives in the shoe. Anyone? Okay.
Compromise is the only way that any relationship works, because otherwise you're supposed to live alone. Everybody isn't the same person. No. So you have to learn how to like be able to give to get, and also to give just to give.
Man, that's so good. Absolutely.
You know, and that's what I learned too. It's just, these things are huge. And I mean, that's an ongoing process of learning how much to give.
Right.
And I think that's just all you have to do in sort of this world, is learn how to be compromising and learn how to work extra hard in areas that you didn't think you had to.
It's honoring each other, you know, like you can't just steamroll everybody.
Right.
You know, it has to come back and be willing to listen. A lot of people are really bad at listening, but they want to say everything and waiting for their window to say stuff. So being able to hear what someone's communicating. Nicole and I were talking about some of these types of concepts like yesterday evening, and it was really great. It was a great conversation, and it's a very powerful concept to be able just to give and receive and vice versa with people. It really opens up a lot when you're just communicating in an effective way and being able to hear what some people are saying, because I have a deal where I assume sometimes what I'm hearing isn't what's being said, and it can get damaging to a degree.
Absolutely. I think you would agree, being in radio, that the hardest thing is to actually be a great radio and in improv. And I learned this from the Adam Carolla show, said it's actually being, he said, for all the talking that I've done, I've learned to listen is one of the most valuable things. As you said, jumping the gun on somebody's end topic or whatever it is where they're getting to. Yes, we can sometimes see where they're going. But other times we're sort of just trying to make sure that we don't forget what we were trying to say and interject it. And that is the great pain of me as well. I'm saying is I've had that, you know, we're all talkers. I suck the air out of the room. I make jokes about it because I understand it, and I apologize for it.
I'm the same way. I always try to give people this analogy of having ADD and also being very forgetful, is that when you tell me a really long story, imagine it's like you're at the grocery store and I only have my hands and you're handing me milk, you're handing me eggs.
And the other one's falling out the bottom.
Yeah, and it's like you can only give me so many details for me to remember or to like process. And I'll think, okay, well, I want to tell them about milk. So I ask people politely, I'm like, just take a breath in between your story, like a little pause so then I can digest it. Yeah. And then like maybe like comment back. Because, you know, after listening for 30 minutes, I won't necessarily.
That's a long time though.
Yeah, you know, but you know what I mean? Like there's those people that just go on and on and on. And then they're like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I don't have any more groceries. It all fell. Like,
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, the thing that's interesting about that is what a therapist actually told me that helped me, because I used to be told, hey, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to say all that stuff during that conversation. You know, that you don't have to take up all that room. And I said, it's kind of like if somebody gets their muscles locked up and they can't unlock it. Sometimes that happens to people like us that do that. And so I have to be mindful of this one thing, which is you don't have to get everything out in this one meeting, and that those things that you want to say will have a time when they're supposed to come out. And that has been the thing I've had to say to myself when I've had these lightning bolts of ideas that I've wanted to interject into the conversation I'm having with somebody, but I realize that they have something that they're earnestly trying to get across. So therefore, I'm not really doing them service if I don't try to take in what they're saying. I think what we both share, maybe you as well, is that we worry that we're going to forget something that's important.
Yeah.
The key is going, maybe it's not so important. Maybe I'm not so just to put on top of this.
I don't have to control it. I can just
and I will offer that,
let go.
You know, I will say, can I come back to what you're saying and ask this and then go right back? I've done that before. That way I'm able to know that I'm building the story. You have a story you're telling me, and you say something like, we were at this place and we were getting this and that. And I'm like, wait, how did you know this person? I sometimes need to, because
too.
I want to know the story behind the story so that I can be part of it. That's just an earnest reason that I want to experience it with them.
But we both like to understand how people tick and the connections and just understand all of the context. For me, in the workplace, I've had to adapt where I always have a pen and paper. So when I'm in a meeting, I can't remember everything that happened.
Good for you.
I just write notes, and if I have a question, I'll put a star next to it.
That's great.
Then when it's appropriate time to ask, but most of the time that question gets answered, you know, if you just...
I love it.
You know, so... If it's an interpersonal thing, you can't really be there like writing notes.
Yeah.
But at least for the work and task-related things where you're expected to do something by all this download of information, you can take notes.
We're getting to the point where we're winding down just about. And we didn't really touch on how families changed you. Maybe you can integrate this into your answer. you're dealing with high stress every day. You're bouncing around. You're spinning a lot of plates,
Sure.
and you're creative. You have the service. You're doing all those things. Where is it? What do you do, and when you find time to unplug? What is your reconnection and your balance?
Well, first thing is partially true and funny, which is somebody said, how do you do what you do? How do you get up at 4 a.m. and drive to Hollywood and get there at 6 a.m. and then leave by, early afternoon? And I said, well, there's a searing fear that I won't be able to provide for my wife and family. That's the first thing that gets me up in the morning. It's a joke, but it's partially true. Because
for a lot of people.
Well, it's also that, for every blue collar worker, there's a lot of that shared blue collar style working ethic in this kind of job. You really need to be there for people and their dreams and their vision. A lot of engineers will take it like, I'm the Lord God. I know what to do with your music. In mastering, we're actually connecting that emotional component to the music, and what we're able to sort of do is to help their vision become ours and ultimately the world's. Because if you go about it trying to be, I know better than you, that is a weird ego angle that really isn't being honest to the client. We're trying to help that client's dream be a reality. So that's the whole point of being a mastering engineer, is not really something else. Then to touch on how do I unplug from that? Well, partially people say, oh, isn't music fun? Don't you unplug that way? I'm like, music is 3% of that, and then 97% agony and pain and editing. It's like 3% of that moment is that moment where you come together. I think it was Chili Peppers said that, like, what's the best time? Being on tour, he's like, the best time is when you've got something. It's that moment when the song is coming together and you have it. That is the most exciting moment. I mean, tears will come out. You go, what if that's it? And it happens, and it's like, yes, there's that moment. So those aren't even that's work. That's not unplugging it either. And I've said it before. You said surfing. Yeah, surfing is why I tell people to find their surfing, because without that, I wouldn't have really any of the fuel that I have. And I will take time out at different points of my life to get involved with that, so that I have that energy. For some reason, every time I'm in the water by myself, and it's sort of a meditation, I'm working on stuff and I don't even know I'm working on it. And I come out of the water with a new melody or a correction to a melody. I'm like, that is such a good, I got to get home and put that down now. And I go home and I put it down. And these are just, and all of a sudden I have ideas. And this is proof that that's doing something for me. When I connect with my wife, and it sounds very like, oh, okay, you're doing that. But something that I wanted to touch on, when we would take walks together and stuff like that, just at the end of the day, you're talking about pivotal moments. She wanted to get out and walk. We have a newborn, and she's gorgeous. And
what's her name?
Her name is Ciel, like the sky. It's a French name, French word for the sky, Ciel. And so Celeste and Ciel, here. And so she's like, I want to take her out for a walk, put her in the bassinet. And I'm thinking, okay, and you change when you just do that walk. Corolla, the aforementioned, said, put on your headphones and listen to classical music. As people on Loveline used to tell him, and Dr. Drew used to tell him, like, hey, what are you doing? That's not proven. Now it's proven.
Yeah.
It's like, and he's one of these guys who sees everything before it happens, and he's able to sort of tell the future because he's just an observational, not only comedian, but a person who's pragmatic. And being ultra pragmatic helps you to sort of be grounded and also keep your humor, because you can sort of make those jokes and moments, but then you can unplug and know that the pragmatic way to go about life is to give yourself something, give yourself some time, but then also work really hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you're going to go tie one on and think that's going to, add to the well, yeah, there are ways of unwinding, but to replenish is really everybody's biggest trick to sort of master. And I think that's really kind of the hardest part about life is really, you can be a great hard worker, but like, how do you get back? How do you get the well back, up? And you've got to find your surfing, whatever that is. It could be anything. Just look for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your insight, for your wisdom. We are so grateful. Please. We have learned so much.
You flatter me, stop it.
Yeah, but Tony Robbins, you've been great.
Yeah.
But just for
He's
everyone
not a sponsor,
there,
is he?
No, but not yet.
Yeah. I'll change my name.
So just one more time, where can people find you? How can people learn more about this place that we're at?
Well, bgmastering.com is going to relaunch all new with new photography that I shot all the shots, and there's some missing parts, but you can go there if you want. It's live. And PGX Music is Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. Grundmaster is Facebook, but I would say just look for BG Mastering if you're looking for the mastering stuff. And as far as the producing and stuff, that's PGX Music. It's just everything else.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you to Bernie Grundman Mastering.
Thank you.
learned so much from that interview. I feel like I've known him for years.
Yeah, Paul really has a way of connecting with whoever he's talking to. And I feel like a lot of the concepts and themes that we talked about in that interview are really going to help people get centered with that self-awareness aspect of things and carry it on and find the fulfillment, find the passion, go after it. You may be going through something similar to him, or you might have another battle, whether it's going after a studio gig or maybe it's your music career.
But I love that, like going with reckless abandon towards your goal and having that awareness that what you're doing today is going to affect the future. So we want to hear from you on social. You can find us at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mental Notes Pod, and let us know what you're doing today that is going to help you get your dreams tomorrow. Hashtag Mental Notes Podcast, or you can find us on our website, mentalnotespodcast.com.
And also, if you love what you're hearing, please hit the subscribe button so you're aware of future episodes.
You'll get notifications on new episodes, and we'll look cooler. So, that makes me feel good.
It definitely helps us.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Mike Bajrami.
And I'm Nicole Slater.
And we'll see you next time on the Mental Notes Podcast.
Ta-da!